Hello, surprise! I know you were expecting Dr. Jackson. Haha, nope, but it's me, Tina Pelzer. Before we jump into the flip side of adversity episode for tonight, I just wanted to take a minute to invite all the ladies listening to our next girlfriend gathering. Yes, it's that time again, and it's coming up at the end of this month. Sisters, we've enjoyed building a community where we grow, heal, and rise together. And now it's time for another moment to breathe. Join us for our next girlfriend gathering session, Grace Over Grind. This is your invitation to step out of the hustle and into the rest, peace, and divine favor God designed for you. Let's reconnect, regain our focus, and access rhythms of grace that will carry us further than grind ever could. Don't miss this opportunity. Your heart, your purpose, and your future deserve it. Register today. We'd love to see you and have you in the space so that we can learn more about grace over grind. I'll see you there.
Trauma, toxic stress, broken habits, and hurting heart don't define destiny, but peace isn't passive. It requires an exchange. To create a flip and access peace in the middle of the pieces, you are challenged to make an exchange of the lies that have kept you mentally hostage in basement moments. Resilience isn't about bouncing back, but bouncing forward. Living Strong, the flip side of adversity, brings powerful stories and fearless conversations from experts in the field of business, relationships, emotional, physical, and mental health, and faith-based communities. Each episode creates a brave space with powerful tools from authentic connections. Tune in as we dig in with Dr. Jackson on the flip side of adversity. Hello and welcome to the flip side of adversity. I am Dr. Veirdre Jackson, the CEO and creative behind Living Strong Consulting. And on this first day of Mental Health Awareness Month, I am so excited to be able to start a healing journey conversation with someone I have called brother for years. And I'm expecting, although the conversation is serious and it absolutely will be healing, it will also be funny. We have had sibling fights in classes as we've trained together. We have been on the road doing our own separate things, impacting the world. But I'm so excited to welcome to the flip side, Brandon Brown. And let me give you a little bit about his receipts. I cannot, as usual, give his full bio justice, but let me just give you a little bit. So Brandon R. Brown is a trauma specialist, a facilitator, and a community advocate with over 25 years of experience supporting healing and resilience in individuals and communities. As a West Philly native, he works with Temple University's Center for Urban Bioethics and has worked with Lakeside Global Institute, creating trauma-informed spaces that allow youth and families to thrive. His lifelong commitment to mentorship, especially for boys of color, and his leadership in national mental health initiatives reflect his passion for equity, healing, and transformational impact. And again, I'm so excited that he said yes, and we welcome Brandon Brown to the flip side of adversity.
Doctor.
It's gonna cut up from the first screen.
No, I'm just gonna say greetings and salutations.
Yes.
Can I actually have that what you wrote? Because I can put that on my LinkedIn.
Oh,
that sounded much better than what I wrote.
Absolutely.
I really
my
appreciate
brother.
that.
Yes, Absolutely.
Shout outs to your team that's going to make this an incredible experience. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate to get the opportunity to spend time with you. So people are going to see maybe a different side of you.
Because he provokes. He provokes. Be prepared. People who are
is it
used
really
to me being
provocation, though?
the serious
I
one,
know.
he provokes. So I'm excited because this has actually been a conversation that has been in the works for a long time.
I was thinking, and I think it's about 3 years.
Yes, it has been a long time that we've
it's
been
about 3
talking
years.
about having this conversation and really allowing individuals to better understand what trauma is
Yes.
and begin to become very practical and empowered with their own healing journey.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. I feel that there has been probably some abuse and misuse of the word trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What I am looking forward to as we sort of dig deeper in the topic is actually looking at this through the lenses of gender.
Yes.
So, I've been hit by this notion, being so eager to talk to you. Like, I sit in a space where I think that women are emotional consumers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas men are emotional rejectors.
Mm-hmm.
So if we even sat just in those two spaces, what are the implications as it relates to trauma?
Right.
So
We store it. Mm-hmm.
How is it stored?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to say is it overstored, but it's just like how does it really sit with people? How is it passed from people to people?
Mm-hmm.
How are we impacted by community?
Mm-hmm. Generation to generation.
Community norms, societal
Yeah.
expectations, family traditions. Take your pick.
Right. And so people are like, wow, you going to do all that in an hour? Well,
No.
guess what?
not this time.
Guess what? We've actually cultivated a 3-part series.
Yes, this is going to be fun.
For this conversation. And as I shared, I created this space, this platform, as not one to just talk about the problem, but actually allow our listeners to understand what they can become empowered to do.
Exactly.
So we're going to, over the rest of this month, so you're here this week, and then the 22nd, and then again the 29th.
Yeah.
So I know, and get ready, because we're both educators. And so you're going to have homework as well.
Can we give homework right now?
No, what? Oh, look.
Literally,
See,
can we give
I was
homework
trying
right
to ease y'all into it.
No. Because
I don't.
So if you're from Philadelphia, we have this expression, feeling some kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would challenge anyone that at any point in time, if either you or I say something that put them in a very awkward space, right?
Yeah.
Jaw got tense. They started clenching their hands. They felt something in their chest. Deep breathing.
Yes.
If you have water, take 8 sips of water, because a sip of water is just like taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
So in most of our communities of color, we have a very dangerous practice of pushing through. And it would be detrimental to both you and I as educators and advocates of this if people were actually trying to, like, I don't want to miss a word, but you're doing it at the expense of yourself.
Yeah.
So the homework is, like, if you don't know about taking a sip, take a sip.
Yeah.
Take that sip of water.
You know what? I'm going to actually call that the pre-work.
Okay.
Because I feel like that is a very authentic way for people to give themselves permission to really be present in their bodies and to take care of themselves before we even jump into this. Right. And so let's actually jump into it. So why did you want to actually start this conversation through a lens of gender? There are so many angles we could have been talking about trauma through. Why did you want to do it through the lens of gender?
So I don't know if I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be very specific with what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, in the spaces of trauma-informed, trauma sensitivity, trauma-aware, do you really hear a conversation that is specifically directed at communities of color,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, you don't really hear a lot about application,
Right.
right? So you get this really beautiful theatrical theory, didactic, multisyllabic word conversation, which people are like, huh, what? But you don't hear people or individuals, hopefully like you and I, what we're going to do is say, you know what, let's just talk about this. In none of my research have I seen it talked about coming at it from a gender standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
right? They always want to talk about, they want to talk about ACEs, they want to talk about all of these
Yeah.
other things. But I'm like, I really think that there is an opportunity to look at this from gender. They've always said, what is it? Men are from Mars,
Mars and
and
women
women are
from Venus.
right? So if we
Mm-hmm.
use that just as a premise,
Mm-hmm.
and we understand that there are differences between men and women, then there has to be fundamental differences with how we see trauma, how we experience it,
Mm-hmm.
how we store it, and how we express it.
And I even lean in that not even just based on who we are as genders in a biological context, but in a social construct, how it's delivered, and then how we're actually told to process it or suppress it. So if we can like just really jump into it and unpack, like when you are thinking about this conversation from a male or boy perspective, how would you articulate that society delivers a message of process or suppress emotional intelligence, emotional wellness?
I would I would argue, I think I would lay a foundational argument that men, particularly
Mhm.
men of color in particular, are raised to be emotionally intelligent, stagnant. And this is what I mean. If a young lady, if a young child, female child falls, what do we say?
Oh,
Poor baby.
poor baby.
Come here, little
Come
momsies. Come here, momsies.
The
Let me
crying
pick you up.
and the hug. Mhm.
Let me do
Mhm.
this. But when the boy falls, hey, what's up? You good? Like, brush it off and keep it moving.
Or even don't cry. Like the message.
So there is sort of like the beginning stages of, if something hurts, I'm not supposed to let it show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to give that outlet. I am like almost forbidden,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would say that it starts from a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be clear about, there could be a connection that some of the family traditions, expectations, societal norms that we have come back from other places and spaces.
Exactly. And at the time, it was a safety mechanism
Yeah.
that
Don't you look at that person,
has stayed beyond its expiration date
Well,
in some cases.
this is where we have to get slightly
Okay.
educational.
Okay.
Because one of the expressions of trauma is transgenerational.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very possible that things that you and I are doing are things that were the consequence of things that happened to our great grandmother and grandfather, right? Big fancy word called epigenetics, that something
Yes.
happens and it actually gets passed through the genes. So I often say, like, sometimes if you're not sure why you're feeling a particular way, there could be a reason, but that reason was never shared with you.
Yes.
And I'm talking about fear or mistrust of the police.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about being uncomfortable in spaces where you might be the only one,
Right.
But people don't really want to think about it, like, and oftentimes we're not taught to sit in places where we're uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as men, we're taught to push through. Let's go back to the original, right? We're taught to push through, like nothing is to bother you. The woman that you love has left you, there's another one. So it's, at what point in time do or are men allowed? And then where I really struggle is if we're told to be like emotionally, like the rejection of emotion. Then we find the person that we really, really want to be with, and they're looking for an emotional content, but it's never been developed within.
Right. You don't have the skill
No, it's you.
or experience.
I always say you can't blame somebody for something they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? James Baldwin said, a child can't be something they cannot see.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is, if you want, my question is, if you want men to be emotionally available, when were they taught that? Right? Because we were taught that presence, maybe for the most part for some, was finances. Like my love for you is to demonstrate that the bills are paid, that the food, and all of that other stuff. But of course, your socialization has come at this that, there's like the eternal conversations and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there like, what do you want me to do?
Right. We're wired differently. We experience life differently. But I lean in because we actually started this conversation before we even got into the studio, because I pushed back. And yes, I do agree with everything that you've laid out. And that conversation I've heard often, in how society has shaped these norms about being a tough boy, and that nurturing of the girl. I agree. But there's an element that I feel in which women have had to figure out how to be tough and tender, and how to grind, as well as be the one who not only provides, but also is the talker. And I think that weight also has impacted us, and we continue to carry something that wasn't necessary. It is not how we were originally designed, but it's literally residue. Like we've got to figure out how to provide and do the talking, make sure everybody is feeling okay, and hold it together. Because if I'm too emotional, then I'm weak. If I get upset, I'm the mad Black woman. And it becomes this crazy complex thing that in two camps is hurting humans who don't have the skill set to really understand how to see one another,
right? Create
space for each other.
Right. And that's, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you just said. Because for me, I'm trying to understand, where did we lose our community? Like, where did we lose our support systems? Even when we didn't have family, we had community.
We had community.
I don't even know if we have community anymore. We have people that live on the block that don't even speak to each other.
That don't talk.
So I think...
and can I say, and something that I've been talking about since January, is that if we are going to survive this season, it's going to be connected to community, connection, and collaboration.
Absolutely.
Like, we can't continue to be in a place where I don't intentionally seek out an opportunity to connect with you, to check in with you, to see you, to identify how we can collaborate, even if we don't come from the same place or have the same background.
Yeah, but that's it's a beautiful place, but you got to walk through some dangerous paths to get there.
It's hard paths, but if we can raise awareness that we were designed as human beings for connection, and if we can take back something that we deserve, like we're not designed to be in isolation, to be in anger, to create walls, to be separated.
Right, but if families somehow became fragmented, if communities became segmented, it's no longer, I can sort of look after your kids and you can look after my kids. It's no, I look after my kids and don't you dare give me any grief about my kids, right? So, but for me, the real interesting thing about this is for you to connect with me, I have to want to connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to recognize that some of your questions might be different. So, at what point in time am I going to be vulnerable enough to actually answer your question?
I think we have to orchestrate spaces to practice it. It I don't believe that it will organically happen.
Mm-hmm.
I actually am encouraging, probably giving you another assignment for one of your studies.
We'll figure it out.
One of the many research studies that
We'll
you
figure it
do,
out. We'll figure it out.
that there's actually an intentional opportunity for people to learn how to have hard conversations, how to sit in discomfort, how to actually hear past the offense. But some of that has to be it. You have to have someone who will facilitate something that is so new and can be so raw.
Right. Well, yes. But I also think that for some of that to happen, we have to introduce things that never, like people never have been taught.
Mm-hmm.
We've never been taught how to listen.
Well, that's a whole workshop
I mean, think about
by
it this way.
itself.
If you're thinking of your response while the person is talking, you're not listening.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably have missed something beautiful
Mm-hmm.
because you automatically needed to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes ego gets into the response.
Sometimes
Sometimes I'm going to put it out.
you're being gentle.
I am being very nice. I'm being, because I got to come back twice.
Yes.
We can see what happens the
Yes.
other 2 times. But no, I think that some people want to relive their life through the response to another.
Mm.
So it's like you tell me something, but instead of responding to you, I tell you what this used to mean to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
Or I defend my truth. I'm defending something that I think you said, but I even missed what you actually said.
well, that's because we don't really listen.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really,
So-
and there's such a level of, whether people want to understand it or not, there's such a level of sensitivity about things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm talking about sensitive that, I don't know if you saw Bad Boys, the first Bad Boys, and they had a conversation.
I think I saw the first one.
And they were like, we want you to take this and put it in a box, and then we're going to put this in cement, and we're going to drop it. Like, we're never going to talk about this again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not in the sea, it's right here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It doesn't just disappear.
No. And it lives.
So wait, because we're going really quick, and
We
I
haven't
want to
started
make
yet.
sure we haven't looked.
We
And
haven't
they're
started
like,
yet.
"What? Y'all haven't even started." I've asked maybe
Hey.
one question.
She has notes.
I do.
I have
have
a piece of paper
notes.
that I left at home.
I have notes. I've asked maybe one question, but I actually want you to pause because we explain to them as educators, they're going to have homework.
Right.
So if you were to give someone the assignment of becoming more aware of how they are or aren't listening
Mhm.
over the next couple of weeks, what would you encourage them to either practice, explore, or do around listening?
So I would hope that they're watching the way that we're talking. I would hope that they would see that we're allowing each other to complete their sentences before that there's a response. I would hope that they would understand that even though we are passionate, we are still being purposeful and not trying to do anything from a body language standpoint to make it seem that this is being like that I'm trying to antagonize or provoke you, right? I often have to sometimes sit and wonder, like, I understand what the person said to me, but if I'm impacted by it, this isn't a time to respond to that because they were talking to me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, about being present, sometimes I look at it as like Taoism or some of the other types of religions. It's like, are you emptying yourself so that I can receive the information that's being given,
Mm-hmm.
or am I already so full that I can't take anymore? So sometimes the question is, am I ready to talk? Because sometimes some conversations you can be like, I don't really want to talk about this right now.
And say it in a way that the person can hear that I won't ever be ready.
Oh, no.
It's just that right now
It's not a good time.
I can't.
Right now it's not a good time. And you want to know that's something that I've been asking people to do?
Yes.
All right, so let's just make this, we're going to do a real quick role play. Just tell me something that happened to you real quick.
Something that happened to me real quick. Somebody cut me off on the way here and yelled at me. They cut me off and yelled at me. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, you are not going to take me outside of myself. But how you going to cut me off? And then you going to yell at me? Wrong.
Am I listening or can I lean in?
I do that all the time. But I don't want people to miss what you just did. Actually asking, what do you need right now?
What function do I serve in this conversation?
Right.
Am I a listener? Because if I'm a listener,
Yes.
I'm listening. I have no comments. I have nothing to say. So when someone says, no, you're listening. Okay, come on. Give me some more.
Mm-hmm.
But because
Yes.
I think oftentimes we feel that there needs to be a response. I think sometimes we get very uncomfortable in silence.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's just think of it this way. Someone has passed. And instead of sitting with them and just physically being present, not saying anything, we want to say things that might injure.
Right.
Right? We might give the assurances. Well, this person's with God.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, but that's not what I want to hear, because if you can give me 30 seconds with that person, I'll take that 30 seconds. So don't come to me with the religion right now.
I need presence.
Right. Or this reminds me when, you are not going to do that.
No.
I asked you to be here for me, not to make this about you. But in truth, all you had to do is just sit still.
Yeah.
I have no problem saying, I don't even know what to say to that.
So as I'm listening to help people track what you are challenging them to consider in conversations over the next 2 weeks.
Let them finish their full thought. When it's appropriate, ask them, am I responding, or did you just want someone to listen? I'm just going to stop right there.
But I don't want you to, because I think the part of emptying I have to.
You have to be present for the conversation.
I've got to be present.
You do.
And set the intention.
So I look at things like this. You know, I try to come up with these really fun analogies. So what's your favorite soda?
Soda?
Yeah.
I don't drink soda, but I'll say ginger ale.
Okay. So say I gave you a ginger ale and I asked you to take a sip, and you're just enjoying the ginger ale. At some point in time, you feel the need to belch. I'm like, no, doc, can't belch. Drink some more. So you're drinking some more. The experience is becoming a little different, right? Because you wanted to let go of this belch, but you haven't let it go yet. So you're like, Brandon, I got to belch. No. I need you to drink some more. At some point in time, because your body has consumed so much, and I think you see where this is going.
Yeah.
You are forced to belch.
Yeah.
Now that's that fancy way of talking about the allostatic load. And I sit in spaces and people like allostatic load, and I look at it like this way. Every time you talk to somebody, you pick up energy. Right? So if you've had to work with several people during the course of the day, big ones, little ones, four-legged ones, whatever you had to do, and if you haven't had a chance to process that, by the time you get home, you're already full. Right? You can't take on anything else. But you have children at home. You have a partner at home. So the whole thing is, if you didn't process during the course of the day, you are going to need to be able to process either before or by the time you get home, just so that you can have a little bit of presence for the people that you live with and love.
So now I want to lean into the intentional title you created for this. How does that play out in a male? Because I'm thinking about how that plays out in a woman.
So,
and I don't want people to miss that we're not talking about ginger ale anymore.
But I wanted people to understand it because
Yeah.
people are like, why is he talking about soda? He was like, ooh, why you belch on that person? And they'd be like, but that's what happens.
Right.
Like,
I keep taking and taking and taking.
Or we lie to ourselves and say that these things aren't bothering us.
And I push.
Right.
I'm pushing.
And you can only fit so much into that suitcase. You know how like people talk about invisible backpacks? I think a lot of us are walking around with invisible luggage.
Whole luggage. But what I love about the analogy of the ginger ale is the pressure.
Yes. So
it's the buildup of the pressure.
So what you do is you handle the pressure.
Yeah.
So at those moments where you said like, I need to belch. Belch.
Yes.
Right. Don't try to hold it down. Right.
Do what you need to do to release, and shift, process.
But then we also have to understand that could there not be physiological consequences from that pressure of just holding the soda?
Right.
How does that impact my chest? How does it impact my stomach? Right. So what I don't think a lot of people understand is that when you hold on to stress, right? Stress is that headache that you think you have to keep taking aspirins for, but really you're holding on to something.
Which?
The stomach ache that you have.
I'm so excited.
The stomach ache that you have.
Yes.
That you've been sitting with for weeks.
Yeah.
And you've taken your Malox and all that other stuff. It's literally because you probably had a conversation or sets of conversations that you have not unpacked.
And you had to carry what someone else is delivering to you.
Oh, yeah.
And have not had anywhere to put it.
Let me put it like this. A couple weeks ago, I had a serious incident happen at one of the locations that I work at. And I was helping people sort of in that moment. I was dealing with a very large group. I did not let go of that energy until 2:30 in the morning. I was not going to go to bed holding on to that. And oftentimes what I try to get people to understand, I was like, yo, did you go to bed tired and wake up tired? And they're like, yeah, you never got the REM sleep.
That part.
So apparently you were holding on to something that blocked you. So you got a restless sleep. People are like, well, and I'm like, the thing is that you could be holding on to things that you don't even know that you're holding on to. I think sometimes the way that I look at it is energy is like little pieces of tape that we have on us. And we don't even know that we've collected things because we thought we were walking on a clean path. But then when we go to look at the tape, we got stuff all over the tape. And I think people don't understand when you've had a rough conversation with a friend, you've had a difficult conversation with your spouse, right? When you've had a challenging conversation, right? All of that stuff sits because on the man's side, I will say that sometimes we are willing to say things that we didn't mean, but aren't willing to say sorry for it.
100%. I've seen that happen.
So, and it's things like, and I always say like, well, that's what I felt. No, that's what you decided.
That's what you decided to say out of the place of pain.
You were in pain. There is nothing wrong with being in pain. There's nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with stress. Like all of those things are good within moderation. However, you then use it as an excuse. You said, I did it because I was in pain. No, you chose to say what you did. And I do not believe that there's an individual that has never said something that they wish they could take back.
Right.
However, but what they're going to do is they're just going to sit there and say, oh, I said what I said and I meant it. And in that mistruth, that's more pressure.
That continues to impact you as well as create a divide for me.
Right.
And what made me excited was next week we're actually having one of my sorors, Dr. Shonda McManus. Okay. She's coming into the
shout outs to Greeks and stuff.
I didn't say which one.
Okay.
I didn't say which one.
All right, shout out to my
they
fraternity.
all know. They all know. She's actually coming in to talk about how everything that's going on in our culture, society, how racism, how we as women, specifically Black women, are carrying the stuff that is happening to us in our bodies. So as a medical doctor, she's going to go real deep into how we're weathering in this season.
And you can sit with that just by looking at the ACE scores.
Mm-hmm.
Like if no one's ever looked at, not to try to get too academic, but if anybody wanted to look at the adverse childhood experiences, and in truth, you know that wasn't done for the trauma conversation. It was done for the insurance conversation.
Yes, it was.
Right. So I look at it as almost like when you get beautiful things that are created in one space, but they have more advantage in another space.
Yeah.
So the whole notion of everything that we have taken on, right? But one of the things I try to get people to understand, though, or at least consider, is that a lot of the pain that we have experienced might be subconscious, unconscious. Like, I sit in a space where I don't want people to believe that everybody knows that they've been traumatized, right? Because I think that some people, when they look at the word trauma, they say, well, this person should know.
So how are you defining trauma, though?
Well, the way that I define trauma is that it's a subjective experience with neurological and psychological consequence. Now, if I had to be the English teacher in this for a second, I would say that the power word is subjective, because we could experience the same thing. But for you, it might be just a little blip. But for me, it might be a complete change in course, right? And I don't think people understand that, because people want to think that trauma is like this thing that you can just give a blanket definition to, right? If something's traumatic for me, it might be traumatic for you. Somebody that I hold very dear to my heart once said, every drama is not trauma. So I think people have traumatic lives, but I don't know if it's traumatic, right? You've gone through a lot of drama, but I don't think that it's trauma. Like when we talk about trauma, there are sort of like 4 or 5 points that it has to be. Like there's a sense of loss of time. The memory is incomplete, or it's sort of out of place. But more importantly, they feel that it was inescapable. That I was greatly going to be impacted. Either I was going to be severely hurt, or that I might not have come out of that situation. So I think, standing in the line with someone that has too many items at the supermarket is not traumatic. Having a hard conversation with a friend is not traumatic. Failing a test is not traumatic. And I think what happens is we have a tendency to just misuse words.
Or overuse.
Right. So
until it's become diminished.
But wait, so here's my new thing that I've been trying to do. I do not allow the following words in my space.
Okay.
Good, okay, all right, fine.
Why?
Because they tell you nothing. If I ask you how you're doing and you say okay, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
How am I to respond to that?
Yes.
And it's beautiful that if you look up some of these words, so if you looked up fine and looked at just the AI definition of fine, it says, oh yeah, you use that word when something's so serious and you don't want to talk about it.
And you know what? It's interesting that you say that, going back to this gender conversation, because in this season in time, I have my own ebbs and flows, like emotionally, mentally, physically. Right. And so I've consciously, as people have asked me, so how you doing today? I have consciously said, I'm okay. I have stopped saying I'm good, because I'm not. And I've waited to see how many people pause to say just okay. And very seldom have people actually picked up on the fact that, and they'll say, oh, that's good. And I'm like, I didn't say good. I said, I'm just okay.
Well, am I listening or can I lean in?
You can lean in.
All right. So I think sometimes we start conversations without the intent of having a conversation.
Agreed.
I think we do things sometimes just to placate. Like, hey, how you doing?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But I'm not asking the question really to ask you how you're doing.
I don't really care.
Right. However, I think the people that have the bandwidth with you should be like, okay,
And there are some
Like, what does that mean?
who pause, some who actually have, some who really understand my energy
Okay.
will pick up on, that's not how you, okay. So what does that mean?
So, in one of the committees that I chair, I always start with the feelings wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even had the dialogue that sometimes when you don't have the language, you go to your default language.
Absolutely.
So sometimes, like a committee member will say that I'm okay. And instead of pushing back, because I'm not trying to injure,
Mm-hmm.
I will just simply say, you know what? I don't know what that means, but I will accept it for now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what okay means. I don't know what fine. I don't know what all right means. But if that's what you're willing to give me, I'm going to give it. But I'm not going to ask additional questions.
So I'm curious because I can quickly and easily see and experience a feelings wheel.
Mhm.
I'm curious, when you are in male dominated spaces and you pull out this feeling wheel, like it makes sense to me in girlfriend gatherings, we will be quick to we'll have a whole feelings conversation. And I feel natural and okay to bring out a feelings wheel in those spaces. I'm curious, in a male dominated room.
So I am willing to understand that when I initially pull out the feelings wheel, that there's going to be a large period of time that they're just going to look at it. So, and I use it, and just to be clear, I use it in all of my spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is almost part of my like holistic hello.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How are you feeling? Because I also feel that sometimes I need to know how you feel so I know how to engage you.
Absolutely.
Right? So if I come in thinking like, oh, Doc's ready to talk, and we talk, but you're not in that mood, again, I could possibly do more injury than help. So the whole thing is sort of like, tell me how you feel. So oftentimes I have noticed with men in the very beginning, they just stare at the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has all different types of colors, and if you really read it, it's like, this is how you feel when your needs are met, and this is how you feel when your needs are not met. I have a QR code on there, so if you don't want to look at the screen, you can look at it and look at it from your phone. And I let it be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say things that they don't understand, because I'm like, do you know it's possible you can feel more than one emotion at the same time? So the question that I ask isn't, how are you feeling? So if we're looking at the feelings wheel, I would say something like, if you had to give me a word or words, color or colors that demonstrate how you feel right now in this moment, what might they be?
Mm-hmm.
And all I say is thank you.
Don't judge it. Don't overtalk it.
No, we don't talk about it at all. It is just an acknowledgement. The research says that. And I tell people, like, even if you do it for yourself, I can say how I feel to me, and it would make me feel better.
But that, go ahead.
And I'll just say this. But if I don't have experience with emotional intelligence, this is why I'm almost, I don't want to say that I'm working with a handicap, right? But I understand that many men might not have exposure. And I'm doing this with one of the best fraternal organizations in the world.
I knew he was getting.
No. You said we don't. You said we don't put names out there, but I'm just simply saying, But the whole thing is, that is something that we are working with. But this is what I will say. What I will say is, that people are now starting to thank me, because they're like, you know what? I am doing a level of introspection and reflection that I've never done in my life. Now, I'm being told this by 60, 65, 70-year-old men.
Yeah.
They're like, young blood, I don't know where you're coming from.
Right.
Because I know that you didn't go down any rabbit holes, but just dealing on the surface level, I feel like I have direction. So I would never, at least on the male side, because, and again, here's the difference, because I think one of the disconnects is around emotional intelligence.
Right.
Right. sometimes I feel women grow up with the 124 crayon box, and men are given the 7.
Mm-hmm. Because they're not allowed to color.
No.
They're just not allowed to color freely.
No.
And
we can't even. Do we really want to go down the rabbit hole of the masculine identity? I don't know. We might do that
in 2.
Yeah.
But because I cannot believe it's already, we have like 9 minutes left. But
9 minutes of what?
Of our first episode. No, I'm not. I am absolutely telling you the truth.
Can I look at my watch?
And I literally got one question in, y'all. And the people are here for it. They're like,
we didn't even start. I told you we weren't going to start.
Well, that's why we said we were having 3.
Remember, you were like, we can do this in one episode. I was like, no.
I knew that we couldn't. But so the elements of what you just talked about, I feel like there's another opportunity for an assignment, because if I am coming and I've drank ginger ale after ginger ale after ginger ale, being able to have a consistent relational tool to just at least allow us as 2 different genders of experiencing life to actually have a common way of just checking in initially and using a tool that will allow me to not necessarily have to pull all of it apart, but to accept it in how it's been shared, and then you accept it in how I needed to express it. And then that's okay, but we've used something that allows us to be more reflective, to learn the skill of releasing, to learn the opportunity of creating space to come together.
That is a beautiful end result. And though I'm very free flowing, I am very strategic, and I just feel that for many people to get there, they have to do so many baby steps.
So what's a baby step before you would introduce a feelings wheel to just check in with?
No, the feelings wheel, let's just look at it.
Okay. And not talk about it.
Nope.
Okay.
Because I am always amazed how just when adults are given the feelings wheel, like I let them, because like if I have it on the smart board or on the projection, I tell people to get up, just go look at it, just sit with it. And you would think that the check-in is going to last 30 seconds, but sometimes the check-in is like 9-10 minutes, because I'm not rushing you.
So how about
you can sit there and stare at that feelings wheel until you feel that you have found something that speaks to your truth.
So then what if we give them a feelings wheel that they can access?
Can I give you the feelings wheel that I used in that organization I talked
Absolutely.
about? Okay.
So learning the skill to even just check in with yourself can be huge on both. I don't care what gender you are.
Yeah, check in with yourself 5 times a day, just about.
But people often don't. And so after this episode, in the show notes, we are going to give you a link to a feelings wheel. And part of this first step, because again, share the definition of trauma,
is a subjective experience with psychological and neurological consequence.
Right. So it's,
in other words, it affects your brain and it affects your body.
But it can be subjective. And if I'm not more aware of how I'm feeling, of how that impacted me, of getting present, of just checking in with me, I can move through spaces carrying energy and giving it to others unintentionally.
I think sometimes we are like emotional and action hoarders. Like we've just held on to a lot of stuff. So what I would tell people is like, all you have to do is just create a little bit of space. I'm not asking you to clean out anything yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I need you to be able to clean out a little bit of space so you can be present for yourself in that point in time.
And so using the feelings will start, your goal is to get to 5 times
Right. That's the goal.
in 2 weeks. But actually downloading it,
Put it on your phone.
put it on your phone, and give yourself
Keep
the
it on iPad.
gift.
Yeah.
Give yourself the gift of getting present.
So let's give this a
With
more
you.
specific one.
Yes.
They'll download the feelings chart, or they can just identify a feelings chart. They don't have to use the one that's going to be in the note. They need to download one that has a multitude and variety.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on their screen. Every time they turn on their phone,
Yeah.
have them get into the practice of, how do I feel right now?
Yeah. A level of accountability.
Just, how do I feel right now? And it's not to just pick whatever their eyes land on first.
To actually check in.
Yeah.
And ask themselves.
I mean, even, and as long as I've been doing this, like when I check in with myself, it still takes like a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it's not, because there are no patterns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm really excited and energetic that I've got to spend some time with my big sis. But give me about an hour later,
Mm-hmm.
if you were to call me or text me and ask me how did I feel, it's not going to be this.
Right.
Emotions are fluid.
It's fluid.
So, and I guarantee you, most of the people that have been watching us, if they really wanted to check with themselves, I'm pretty sure that they've been a little bit all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that we need to understand, right? And that for me, there's a beauty in the frailty of emotion. However, if many people haven't been given the opportunity to fully understand what it means to be emotional, because you can't have men be emotional because that's not masculine.
Mm. But anger is.
Well, anger, some people will probably argue, is a function.
Mm.
See how we have to compartmentalize?
Mm-hmm.
Because being male is okay to be angry, but
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't say tender. You wouldn't say compassionate male. You wouldn't say empathetic male, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like it's getting better though. These conversations are getting better within male communities.
I feel that in a very beautiful way. I don't know if it was because of COVID or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it provided an opportunity for a lot of people to have some really beautiful conversations with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, yo, you've lived with yourself, but do you like yourself?
And I think this being a powerful first step to the conversation, because we're really challenging people that first, if we're going to have how it's impacting across people,
Right.
you have to be able to go within you first and really explore how your lived experiences are impacting and shaping you.
You cannot do anything for anyone unless you're willing to sit with it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There is, think about it. How many trainings have you ever gone to and you look at the trainer and say, I don't believe the trainer believes what they're trying to tell me?
Mm.
It is not, the trainer is degreed and they are talking it, but you're like, there is something about it that to me, this reads as disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about this, like, you can't have a conversation with someone unless they can feel it from you. This isn't a checkbox thing. Like, this isn't, they've watched one conversation with us and all of a sudden they're the emotional area.
I got them right.
It's like, I think people need to understand that validity and trust come from, I see that you struggled with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, well, how we always say you can't have a testimony unless you've been tested.
Right.
So, but I also feel like in this space, and a lot of my male friends, they have gotten used to me asking how you feeling,
Mm-hmm.
or that if I send a text checking in, that they know that they're not going to respond all right
Mm-hmm.
or okay.
Because those words are off the table.
Off the table. And the whole thing is, but it has to be practiced. So I can't immediately take those words off the table, but I have to set that as the expectation, right? So if we want to say that for everybody that's watching us on all the different platforms, if we wanted to say, you know what, if you wanted to give yourself a goal that perhaps by the end of our conversations, you will make a promise to yourself to try to use those words less.
Yes.
And when you are comfortable with those people that you have the bandwidth and the trust with, and you can be vulnerable with to answer those questions, you will be honest and forthright and say exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
You will give your vulnerability a moment of authenticity, which most of us will not do.
Yeah. So we've come to the end of our first conversation.
That is absurd.
I'm telling you.
How much did we get through on your notes? How many questions? We got through like two?
No, we only did two questions, the first two. And I had 12, y'all.
12 questions.
I had 12. We got through two. As we close out this first conversation,
which I want to say thank you on all different types of levels.
This is going to be an amazing ride, and people have been making comments.
And on your opening scene, were you walking on the Hamptons or something like that? Where were you walking?
No, that's actually Sandy Cove.
Really?
It is. Okay. That's like one of my happy places. It's actually a place in which, for this conversation, I had a complete emotional breakdown. Because I had stored up years of being told I wasn't enough. And it was on the shore at Sandy Cove. That's why walking in that space is so significant for me, that I just had an utter breakdown. And I want to say 8 years later, on the flip side of my healing journey, I stood in that place for the first time, released my book, Fearless Conversations with the Limitless God, as a keynote speaker in the same space that I had spent days, 8 years previous, days just crying on the shore. So that's why that image is so important to the flip side.
Understood.
When you think of what are the key things you want people to take away from this conversation as they prepare for the next one?
Let people complete their full thought. Be honest with yourself if you are ready to receive. Like, how present can you be, right? Challenge yourself with the feelings chart. Like I said, they can use the one that's going to be provided, or they can identify one for themselves, and make attempts to use those words less. I mean,
and what are the 4 words again?
Good, all right, fine, okay. Like any of those words that actually tell you nothing. Like if you worked so hard on a meal, and you said, "How was it?" And I said it was okay. Do you see the reaction that you just had? Right? Or you created a birthday gift for me. And I was like, "Oh, that's fine." And you'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
So we have to understand that when I write things, and good is the other one. So when I write things and I ask people for their opinion about it, and they'd be like, "Oh, it was good."
No.
What does that mean?
What does it mean? Yeah.
What does that mean? Was I too personal? Was I too professional? Was I too academic? Help me, give me something. Or I would rather have you say, like, I read it and I have no comment.
Right. So use those words less.
So I'm challenging people to use those words less. Be more in tune with yourself.
Yeah. Be more in tune.
And belch more.
Release. Release. I tell you, I told y'all this one. Cutting up. So I have to tell you, this is only one of a 3-part series. We ain't gonna get through 12 questions. We have to. I have many questions here. We only got through the first 2.
Maybe we do a lottery. Maybe the next one we tell people to choose between 3 to 12.
3 to 12.
Yeah, and then they pick where we start.
Look, Aisha said that she loves that we brought the male perspective on feelings and emotions. Bev said this was great. This was an awesome conversation. So look, this, yeah. Cheryl said that's why pauses matter as invites meaningful moments to reflect.
Pause is part of my safety plan.
Pause is part of my safety plan. You know what? I love all of your comments, and I hope that you will be on the journey for us, and maybe I'll get to question 3 and 4 next time. But we specifically curated this 3-part series for us to actually even answer your questions. So if you have questions that you want us to tackle, well, I have the expert in the room, researcher,
consummate student, never the expert.
Researcher,
never the
trainer,
expert.
Advocate, the whole thing in the space. We will take your questions and I'll prioritize yours over mine. But this is going to be a big
statement for you.
I know.
Does anybody know how big of a statement that was for you?
Yeah.
Can you say that one more time for the record?
Nope. One and done. So when we come back on the 22nd and the 29th, we're going to continue to dive into this. Like, how is trauma showing up in your lived experience, in your relationships, and how we are allowing ourselves as genders to process, be resilient, be vulnerable. Walking through landmines, all of it. And I had my question number 3 is I want to know the story behind your experience when your father said, I love you. That was question number 3. And so that's going to be my cliffhanger. So for you to hear the flip side of his story, tell us the experience when your father said, I love you. That's where we want to start with.
To bring up some drinks.
Yes, that's where we want to start with on the 22nd. And as I shared next week, my soror, Dr. Shonda McManus, she is a physician, and she's an author, a speaker, a doctor, a mother, a wife, all the things. But she's going to come to talk with us on how the experiences we are currently having as Black women, as we are weathering all of it, how do we become weatherproof? And how do we pay attention to how we're storing it in our bodies? And as a physician, we're going to have a real conversation about it. You do not want to embrace the month of mental health awareness, and not just fluff conversations, but we are going for the meat of it. And my brother is going to be here for the whole ride. He's going to be here for the whole ride.
There's going to be no salads and no desserts, just the main course.
Just the main course. So I thank you as always. Same place, same time next week on the flip side. We'll see you then.